this is Angela. Welcome to Scrapbook Techniques. I'm so glad you're here on my channel. Today, we are going to work through our third challenge, our third weekly challenge here for April of 2023. And today we are going to work on our technique challenge, which is to use some type of stitching on your layout, either faux or real stitching. And I'm going to show you some ways to kind of go through and do that. Just kind of as a quick recap of our challenge this week, want to have you plan your page here on our free scrapbook page planner available at scrapbooktechniques.com. We are going to use one small photo, and we're making a memory journal layout, which for me means a 6x8 size. We can use as many cardstocks, pattern papers, but I want you to add a piece of vellum somewhere on your page. Our idea that we're going to use, of course, is this challenge. Our technique we just talked about is use some type of stitching. Our colors is black and white. Now, I've made a black and white sample. I'll show you that at the very end. But the layout that I'm going to be working on today to show you the stitching is going to incorporate all of this with the exception of the fact that it's not black and white. But I'll show you the black and white layout that I made. I want you to add some texture using a stencil. I want you to use liquid glass to an embellishments. Glossy accents, crackle will also work. Anything that kind of gives it a very clear, shiny, epoxy type finish. We want to use photo corners on our layout. And then for our Creative 15 challenge this week, I want you to start to gather your stamps and think about how you want to use them. We are going to dive into clear stamp organization for the rest of this month, now that we've kind of gotten the hang of our free scrapbook page planner. Okay? How do you enter our contest to win a free stamp of the month? Upload your finished projects to Scrapbook Techniques on Facebook or tag us on Instagram and use Scrapbook Techniques 2023-03 to either Facebook or Instagram, and I'll find your entries. Tag me in them. Our deadline, your challenge entry must be uploaded by the end of this month, April 30th, to be entered in. So just a quick review of our challenge for this week. And again, we'll have a new one coming out each Monday. So we'll set that aside for right now. And now what I want to work on is really talking about stitching and how this works. So here you can see I've kind of laid out in general my 6x8 layout here. I've got a 4x6 card. I've got a 2 3x4 cards, okay? And what I have here is this cute little tag that I made. And this is an example of the details that stitching can add. Now, I don't know about you, but I always have a hard time using these kind of rounded stickers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a little less round by putting that tag there. I'll have a few lines for journaling, and then my photo is going to go over here. And I'm most likely going to use this little tag over here somewhere around my photo, either peeking out behind it or something like that. And this is where I was experimenting using my book page here, as you can see. And making my own kind of washi tape with it with clear stickers, or excuse me, with clear tape, which is what I have here. All right, so let's get on and let's start talking about our techniques, okay? When I did this tag, I had this cute little doily that I coffee dyed. I had some parts from my book. I had some little washi tapes. I had this cute little leaf and flowers, and even some of our dots here, kind of all in this desert rose color. I inked my edges. I put my ribbon on, and I still felt like it needed something. So I came back in and I added this little black stitched border to it. Now this is a piece of thread. I think this is from like a really, really old like mini sewing kit or something like that. Well, it was driving me crazy because it kept unraveling. So I decided to use this on this. And I don't use thread a lot unless I'm doing something like this. That's a pretty small little project that I'm stitching on. If I would have used my normal embroidery floss, I think it would have been too big and it would have just kind of overshadowed and overpowered this. Whereas this is just a nice little border that fades in the background. I think had I used something as thick as this embroidery floss, it would have become the focal point, which was not what I was going after. I wanted just a nice little accent there to help me with this, okay? So with that, let's talk a little bit about some tools that we need to do some faux embroidery, and I guess faux stitching is probably a better word for it. So I have my little bitty tiny magnetic mat and my ruler just to make it a little easier on myself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my little tag right here and I'm going to line them up so that it's easy to get this fairly straight. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I am going to use a permanent ink on this because keep in mind, this is Scotch tape, so it's pretty slick. And so what I'm going to use, you can use a Sharpie pen, you can use one of these zebra permanent pens. I think I'll use my Sharpie pen today. So what I'm going to do is I am going to start by just making some little stitch marks here, just every couple of inches or so, okay? So now you can see that's kind of what I have there, okay? Now what I want to do is I want to add on each end, I want to add my hole, okay? Here you can see all of the holes where the thread goes in and out. And so I'm doing that by just putting some tiny, tiny little dots there. Okay, just like that. Okay, so there you get the idea. That is a faux stitching. So I've just basically written this on there. I can continue up all the way around, but just in the interest of time on this video, I just wanted to demonstrate how to do this. I will finish this and I will have some copies of it in the video here once I get it all finished. So that's your first technique. Super simple. All you need, you don't actually need anything that's magnetic. You can just put it on your craft mat. Use a ruler, don't use a ruler. I can't draw a straight line, so I tend to use a ruler. So that's our first example of how to do it. Super simple. You need a ruler, you need a permanent pen, and that's about it. Okay? All right, let's move on to our next method. The next method that I want to show you is how to use a template and how to actually get ready to sew all of this, okay? Now, there's a couple of supplies that you will need for this. You will need a big, thick, foamy mat because you're going to be using this super sharp piercing tool here, okay? And so you're going to want to protect your work surface. So this is a really old basil. You can see this poor thing's been through quite a bit. And then this is one of my favorite basil templates here. It has all the circles, and then around the edges, it has these great kind of spaced dots. And this is what we're going to be using today, are these. And then don't forget, if there's other things, if you want to make it fancy, there's lots of other ways you can do that. There's a lot of other edging templates. There's a lot of shape templates, but we're going to be just nice and simple today, okay? And what I wanted to do was this card here. Even though I came in, I inked my edges with Desert Rose, I put some more washi tape on, I used some more embellishments, I still felt like it needed something. So what I want to do is I'm going to add some stitching to this, okay? One of the reasons why I like this basil so nice is I feel like the spacing that they've given you from the edge to where the holes actually are is perfect for stitching, because you never want to stitch exactly on the edge, okay? Because your stitches will just pull through and rip out the pages, okay? Now that I've got this all nice and lined up, you can tape it if you want to. I typically just tend to hold on to it. You can see all I'm going to do is I'm going to poke through each of those holes. All the way across here. You can see I'm even punching through my die cut. All right, and then let's start down the side here. Okay, and now we're going to finish punching the other two sides, again, by lining up this lower corner. And you can see we're pretty close. There we go. So again, I'm going to line up this with this top one. I'm going to line up this with this one. And away we go. Finish our punching here. One thing to note is when you are doing stitching, I tend to use, especially if I'm going to be going over any embellishments, like I definitely am here. Okay, here you can see I'm going right through that heart. And what I do is I tend to use liquid adhesives instead of my normal tape runner or ATG gun, okay? And the reason why I do that is when I'm running my needle through, I don't want to have all this gooey tape type adhesive underneath, because all it's going to do is basically gunk up my needle, my thread, and everything else. So now you can see I've got all the little holes punched right in there. And sometimes even that's just kind of a fun little, way to add texture and interest. But I am going to go ahead and I'm going to use some of my embroidery floss. Once I open a skein of embroidery floss, I tend to put it on these cute little just kind of plastic spindles, just so that I have them all. I have my favorite little fabric scissors here that we're going to cut that off. And then I also have, I might mention, I have just a little drawer where I keep all of my supplies in here. These are a bunch of We Are Memory Keepers, like different patterns and things like that. You can see that you can basically use these to run across your paper and it'll punch the holes for you. These are a couple from EK Success. You can see that retract, oops, and then here's just the single one there. So those are always fun. I have an extra puncher. And then I have my little box of needles here. And I have a variety of them because you use a variety of different threads. So if I'm using if I'm using some of my embroidery floss, I'm going to pull out one of these bigger needles with a bigger eye in it. And actually, I think I'm going to grab this one right there is the one that I want. Okay. And I have a variety of, these are all Mr. Pen needles. They have a variety of length and head size and all of that. I have some normal sewing needles just down in here, my threaders, all of that. But all of that just stays in this little bucket that I believe I got from the dollar store. All right, so let's get our needle threaded, which is always a little interesting. Now, if you don't want to use all of this embroidery floss, and I believe Allison from Scrapbook Generation separates her embroidery floss and only takes like 2 or 3 strands at a time. And that's another way that you can do it. I prefer to either use thread if I want a small little stitch like I did on that tag, or I prefer to use all of the strands of the embroidery floss because it does give it a really dark, bold, or it gives it a lot of contrast and a lot of texture. Okay, I will eventually get this needle threaded, I promise. It's always the worst part of sewing. And I will also note that you don't have to be a sewer to be able to do this on your layouts. I cannot sew a piece of fabric to save my life. But I love doing this on my scrapbook pages, okay? I'm gonna start up here in this corner and just start working my way across. So I'm gonna come up through the back, okay? And I'm gonna watch my thread here on the back because I wanna leave myself a nice little tail here. Okay, nice straight and flat little tail. And I'm gonna take a piece of just clear Scotch tape and I am gonna basically tape that down. So I've now secured that and it's not going to be coming through my page anytime soon. Okay, I'm gonna go down in the next hole. Okay, I'm gonna come up in the next hole. And this is where you have some choices to make. Do you wanna do a skip stitch? Do you wanna continue to give this just a straight line? I am gonna match the type of stitching that I did here on my tag. So I'm just gonna go up and then come back through the prior hole. Okay, so here you're starting to get the idea kind of how you start it. And again, if you've ever stitched or hemmed something or anything like that, it's super easy to do. Okay, so I'm not going to do this whole thing just in the interest of time. Oops. Do occasionally get some little tangles, but here you're already starting to get the idea of what my stitching is going to look like. And if I bring my layout, this is kind of going to be my layout, you're going to see that that black stitching is going to really help tie in to the stitching that I have here. Okay, so that is the second technique. Okay, the next thing that you can do is if you don't have the templates, you absolutely don't need them. And remember, so here I've stitched on a tag. Here I've stitched on a journaling card. You can do the same thing with cardstock or pattern paper, does not matter. And don't forget that you can also come in and you can stitch on embellishments. So some of you might remember these cute little tags we used using our distress inks a little bit earlier this month. So this one I really like, but I like how these have that cute little line in there. And this was just a die cut that I did actually out of one of our scraps. So what I'm going to do is I want to stitch this. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to bring my little pad back here. Oops, no, I'm not. I take that back because I am going to use the punch here. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my ruler from here so I can have something relatively straight, give myself lots of margin here. And I'm just going to come in and I'm going to give myself a few little holes. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing down the side. Again, keeping that relatively. Again, I'm not measuring these out. It's just going to be some irregular stitches. One more there. There we go. And again, just continuing to kind of punch along at regular intervals. Might have an issue there. That's okay. We'll figure it out. And kind of making sure these line up. There we go. So now you can see I have my template all set to be able to come in and stitch this, same as I did here. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you do, please give me a like and don't forget to click that bell to subscribe and to be notified of our future technique videos that come out once a week. So again, I'm going to finish all of this up off camera so you don't have to sit here and watch me stitch because it is a rather long process. And then I'll show you my finished page. Thank you so much. And again, please remember to click like if you like this video, if it's been helpful, and subscribe using the button below. Thanks and have a wonderful day.